I'll do it.
We watched WWF Monday Night Raw, Season 1, Episode 1.
Rob Bartlett is an American comedian, actor, impressionist, and writer who gained widespread fame on the radio show Imus in the Morning. And they did mention Don Imus on this show.
Okay.
He's only 64 years old right now.
Bartlett?
Yeah.
Well, this was January 11th, 1993. So we were, after so many years, we were watching the Monday Night Wars 19 years ago this week. We're very close to being 29 years ago this week on Monday Night Raw. That made me laugh. So we're on the streets of New York, outside the Manhattan Center, where there's no one to be seen. It is empty in Manhattan. Sean Mooney is there, however, to assure us we just missed a mob scene. Good to know. Good to know. Bobby Heenan wants to get into the building. He is not on the show. He's been, in fact, replaced by Rob Bartlett. He is rightly outraged.
Yeah, can you imagine
when I think about
being
this now,
replaced by Rob Bartlett?
Jesus Christ, you took Bobby Heenan off for Rob Bartlett?
Severe downgrade.
So he can't get in. He says, I'll go buy a ticket. And Mooney says, no, it's sold out. You can't get into this building at all whatsoever. And Heenan is outraged. He's determined to find a way in. He has to be on the first episode of Raw. So it's Vince, Macho Man, and Bartlett opening the show. They promise the Steiners in action, a Razor Ramon interview, Coco Beware versus Yokozuna, and the main event, as Randy Savage put it, Damien Demento versus my favorite, The Undertaker.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Macho Man was a huge Undertaker fan.
Dude, Macho Man on the show was like such a fan of wrestling. There was a spot in the Shawn Michaels Max Moon match where they're doing a drop-down spot. And
the spinning arm drag thing?
And Max Moon actually doesn't get to his feet fast enough, so they do 2 drop-downs. Yeah. And then he gets to his feet fast enough, and they do like it's like they do a do-si-do in the air, crash to the mat into an armbar spot. Yeah. And Randy Savage goes, awesome. Like he just marked out for this move. Yes. And like he was just watching the show. He's like a total fan. It was actually really fun to watch.
So the opener is Coco Beware versus Yokozuna. Vince is trying to get Yokozuna over as a monster.
Yeah, because he's going to main event WrestleMania this year.
Of course, but he's saying he hasn't been knocked off his feet. And Bartlett says, you can't even see his feet because he's fat. He's a fat guy, you see.
Called him a big-butted Oriental.
Yeah. Okay. And his only commentary for Coco Beware is making Gary Coleman jokes over and over again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the tagline here, they want to say this is the debut episode of a show called Monday Night Raw, which is kind of a strange name for a wrestling show. It wasn't Championship Wrestling from Florida. It wasn't Prime Time Wrestling. It wasn't Saturday Night Wrestling. Monday Night Raw. Weird name. And they're trying to get it memorable, you see. They have a tagline, which is one of them will say, it's uncooked. And another guy will say, it's uncut. And the third guy will say, it's uncensored. I think they got it right the first time, but they tried it again a dozen times throughout the show and never got it right again, and Vince is getting more and more irritated with their inability to get these 3 words out in that order. So, it's fat joke. He needs a bra. He's wearing a diaper. His ass is wide. And the other guy looks like Gary Coleman. What you talking about, Yoko? The match is nothing. Coco runs at Yoko and falls down repeatedly. Yoko hits a corner charge and a bonsai drop. This sucked.
You know, I was watching AEW Rampage on Friday, and the opening match was Bryan Danielson versus Eddie Kingston for 16 minutes of unrepentant violence.
No joke. Let's stop this review and just watch that match again.
Dude, this is the very first episode of Monday Night Raw on the USA Network from the Manhattan Center in New York, and the opening fucking match is Yokozuna versus Coco Beware in a nothing happening one-sided squash match. And this show is still on the air today. Mm-hmm. This show is worth $600 million or whatever they got from USA for this deal. And this was the first ever match. Fuck me. It's not even that. It's like, then we get to the main event later. I warned you. Damien Demento in the main event of the first Raw.
Well, Brian, you were right. That wasn't
that became a fucking wrestling dynasty over the next 30 fucking years.
You know, one good thing happened in this match.
No, it didn't. Liar.
No, it did. No, Coco took a slingshot type maneuver and absolutely
Thank you,
killed.
Vince.
Thank you. He necked himself on the top rope, and it looked brutal. And it was all Coco.
A slingshot type maneuver.
Thank you, Brian.
He did. That happened, though.
Hey, make it look awesome.
There's a Royal Rumble commercial advertising the Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon main event.
That reminds me, I don't remember what match it was in, but there was another spot somewhere where somebody did a move and nobody knew what the move was called. Like, Randy Savage didn't know what it was called. Vince didn't know what it was called. Rob Bartlett clearly had no idea what it was called. I wish I could remember what it was, but I was what an announce team. I was like, and it wasn't even that complex a move. It was just whatever, and they were all baffled as to what this move was.
It was a Scott Steiner, like the tilt-a-whirl slam or something.
It was something.
Bobby Heenan, who is not in the building, but he has pre-taped a video doing a promo for the incoming Narcissus, which eventually turned out to be Lex Luger. He's warning this man's going to come on his behalf to attack Mr. Perfect. He's better than Perfect. He knows it. That's why he loves himself so much. When you see this man, Narcissus, Mr. Perfect, you're going to think he's from another world. A tease.
So
he's from another promotion.
Was it first name Nar and last name Sissist?
No, Narcissus.
Yeah, like the Greek
Narcissus.
mythology character.
Yes.
Not narcissist.
No, Narcissus.
When they started this gimmick, it was Narcissus. That was his name. And then it became the Narcissist. And then I think they said, yeah, it's Lex Luger. I believe that's how it went.
Okay. Yeah.
The Steiners versus the Executioners.
These Executioners.
I'm assuming it's Barry Hardy and Dwayne Gill, right?
Fuck me. What if got whipped into the ropes and tripped and just fucking fell down?
Yeah.
Yep.
And Vince was like unflappable. He was like, man, look at how hard he threw that guy. I was like, I don't even know if he knew he botched the fucking spot.
He may not have. He said bodies flying. That's all he wants. Here is where Doink the Clown is spotted in the crowd, and Vince is convinced that's actually his name for like a minute until someone whispered in his ear, "It's Doink, sir, Mr. McMahon." And watch this match. Steiners are great. It's not their best squash, but let there be no doubt that is in fact Braun Breaker's dad.
Oh, is it ever? Holy
So
smokes.
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Steiners.
Braun Breaker's match with Tommaso Ciampa was like 50 times better than anything on this show, by the way.
Yes.
Better than Shawn Michaels and
It actually was, yeah.
Max Moon, yeah.
Steiner's one with a bulldog. All right, Bobby Heenan is told that not only is he not working in the building, he can't get through his press, there's also no tickets for sale, but somehow he determined if he shows up in drag, they will have to let him in.
Right.
Well, no, because he claimed he was Rob Bartlett's mother. So he wasn't going to have to buy a ticket. He was just going to waltz in because Bartlett's mother was there.
I missed that part.
Yes.
Okay, that makes some sense at least.
He actually looked like Granny.
I suppose
Wow.
he did. Yeah.
He did. Yeah. He was wearing an outfit. He was in drag, so he was supposed to look like a woman. Had the short blonde hair. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was uncanny.
Yeah, Heenan tried to buy off Sean Mooney and offered him the earrings. And I laughed and laughed and laughed.
Mooney turned him down, of course.
Yes.
Honorable man, that Sean Mooney. Razor Ramon does an interview, and there's a lot of things that have changed in the ensuing 3 decades of pro wrestling. But there's some things that Vince McMahon still loves, because this may as well have been Tony D'Angelo. He's coming in. He's got an accent. He is an ethnicity, even though this one's a fake Cuban. But he's there. He's born ready for this world title match, which he calls a golden opportunity.
Dude, this show it's just like watching NXT 2.0.
Much slower.
The wrestling is actually better on NXT 2.0, which is funny because what we do is we bury the wrestling because it used to be so much better in NXT 1.0. But if you compare NXT 2.0 wrestling to the first Raw, fucking blows it out of the water.
This is, yeah.
But yes, this was Tony D'Angelo here, and just a total stereotypical, nothing happening WWF pro wrestling character. He's facing Bret Hart for the title at the Royal Rumble.
Says
don't think he's going to win.
You've worked 8.5 years for that title. I've caught you in 8.5 months, he says. They show an angle where Razor, as he put it, squashed Owen Hart like a cockroach. I'm sure we've reviewed this before, but it's still funny because they're doing it's literally a sit-down interview in the locker room. Owen's sitting in a folding chair, and Ray Rougeau or whoever is in the other folding chair talking to him. And the camera's on the both of them. They're having a nice, pleasant conversation about whatever. And then you see Scott Hall's giant arm fly into the camera, and it hesitates, and then lariats Owen. I laughed and laughed and laughed. And Razor vows to take Bret's gold at the Royal Rumble. Macho Man does a voiceover for the Headlock on Hunger card, a fundraiser for, I believe, Somalian famine relief. Mr. Perfect versus Ric Flair. Bret Hart versus Bam Bam Bigelow. Shawn Michaels versus Bob Backlund. The Undertaker versus IRS. And Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase.
That's a heck of a card.
Get your tickets now from Madison Square Garden.
Fucking lineup, dude.
That's a big card. And then Tatanka does a promo plugging that show. Max Moon versus Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title.
You know what's funny about this match is, like, I was watching this match thinking this match, like, it was honestly, it was just there on this show. Mm-hmm. But it was also one of those matches when I watched it, I was like, boy, I would have liked to have been in this match.
Oh, sure, sure.
Like, Shawn Michaels is, you know, good. The thing about, well, yeah, it's obviously good, but in WWF in 1993, so it'd been early 93, so in all those 92, 91 shows we watched, I mean, there were very, very basic patterned matches, and everybody did the same shit in every match. And Shawn was a guy who would always want to do something different in his match, whether it be that goofy do-si-do flying armbar thing they did in the air or whatever. It reminded me of Buddy, because Buddy would do the same thing too. Like, you know, we would do all of these matches, and, you know, we could have just gone out there, because we never wrestled in the same place, just go out and do the same match every time, or generally the same match. But he would always want to try some weird shit.
Yes,
that
is true.
What the fuck are you wanting to do?
That is true.
But he always wanted to try something different. And, you know, I would have been fine doing the same old shit. But, you know, oh, well, how about, you know, you hit this and then jump up into the flying head. What? What the fuck do you want me to do that for? But I'm sure he probably got it from Shawn Michaels, because you watched the Shawn Michaels match, and he could have gone in there and done a basic, easy, nothing happening match with Max Moon, but instead they had weird dives, they had weird spots, in the middle of, like, a good, basic professional wrestling match. It wasn't, like, good. It's nothing you need to go out of your way to see.
No.
But it was very interesting to watch, and it was fun to watch. And it was one of those matches where I watched it, and I remembered, this is why I wanted to fucking wrestle, so I could do shit like this.
Buddy once, it was you and me doing a tag match with Buddy and Richie, and it was, like, my first time getting off his shit list. Like, I think we'd been in Tacoma the night before, and he asked if I wanted to go to Portland. I was like, first I thought he was ribbing me, but yeah, I'm gonna take this invitation, and I'm terrified that I will fuck up something. I didn't say one word the drive down. I didn't say one word the drive back. I just did whatever I was told, and we're going over the match, and I was never any good, but this is when I was really, really bad, and I was terrified to fuck up anything. I wanted to do, like, chokes and stomps and a clothesline, and that's all I wanted to do. And Buddy looks at me and says, "You think you can do a tilt-a-whirl slam?" What?
Yeah.
But I was so afraid.
Who?
On him.
Yeah, I know.
I was so afraid to say no to him that I tried it, and I have it on tape somewhere. And because I'm 3 feet taller and 100 pounds heavier, I could tilt-a-whirl slam him. But I hit this move. You've never seen a wrestler celebrate a championship win the way I celebrated getting that tilt-a-whirl slam right. That's what I was like with
That's
Buddy.
the other thing about Buddy, too, was, like, if I had been Buddy, in a million years, I never would have asked you to do that.
Buddy would...
I would have been like, oh, you suck? Okay, we'll do those chokes and those whatever. Let's do nothing else.
Yes.
It's just a complete idiot-proof match.
Yes.
And he would always talk about idiot-proofing matches, but then he would be in there with idiots, and he'd come up with some fucking plan.
He would have one...
And I was like, you're not idiot-proofing this match with Mr. Sexy.
Every night... Every night he had one spot he wanted to do. One move or one spot that was complicated or elaborate and fuck-upable.
Oh, yeah.
And as long as that one got done, he was fine. And then we'll do more stomps and choking.
One of my favorite things to witness was Tim was going to have a hardcore match with Buddy, and I got to listen in on Buddy and Tim going over the match, and Tim was like, yeah, I'll come out with the cane. And Buddy's like, no, not the cane. No. And like, he sees a box of Kleenex over on the nightstand or whatever it was. And he grabs a tissue and he goes, can't you just like choke me out with this? And he
Pretend there's ether on it.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's
There's ether. Yes. Oh, Christ. So anyway, this Max Moon Shawn Michaels thing. So the match itself, as Brian noted, it's certainly not a bad match, but boy, is it just there.
Yeah.
It's two guys doing stuff, and every 2 minutes, Shawn has a wacky idea he wanted to try. The finish, which we'll get to, it's actually, I love the finish. It takes 5 seconds, but it's awesome. Meanwhile, Rob Bartlett decides to do a joke.
Sure.
About how Mike Tyson, who I believe had just been convicted of sexual assault,
That's correct.
is calling in from prison.
Yeah.
And it goes on. And
Holy
on,
fuck. Jesus.
and on. And the joke is Mike Tyson has a high-pitched voice and doesn't know much about wrestling. That's the entire joke. That is the beginning, that is the payoff, that is the punchline. And it's like 5 minutes of this bullshit.
The irony, by the way, is if Mike Tyson would have done commentary on the show, he would have known more than Randy Savage.
That's probably yes.
Sure.
So the finish of this match, which I did love, Max Moon makes his comeback. It was like the rolling fireman's carry and whatever. And finally Shawn cuts him off and he hits the super kick, which was not his finish at the time.
Nope.
His finish was the
Saito.
the crotch lift suplex, which other people named the teardrop, and he was informed of that later. It's like, all right, that's a cool name. I'll use it. But he goes to this suplex, and he wraps it, he laces his arms through Max Moon's legs, and he goes to suplex him, but Max jumps over the top of him and lands behind him. He has countered the hold. And Shawn turns around, and Max throws a punch, and Shawn ducks, hits the suplex anyway. It took 5 seconds, but it made things so much cooler. Because Shawn's not perfect, but he's very cool, and he'll counter your counter and beat you anyway. It was awesome.
Now, who had this title before Shawn? Because it was the gold plates on a teal leather.
Bulldog.
Well, I think he changed the strap color.
He would have,
Nice.
I believe this reign would have been, he won it from the British Bulldog. So
It looked really great with his red gear.
the red and white gear and this teal leather strap. Yeah, it was the 90s. Teal was big.
Sure.
Speaking of the 90s, we mentioned Razor's shirt.
I think I'm going to talk about the Ring Girl.
That too.
The Ring Girl was out of the 80s.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like, this was 1993, and they found a Ring Girl from like 1986.
Big giant
Her
hair.
fucking hair was so giant.
It's bigger
And I
than
was
her
like,
hips.
God, I always thought that like the men, their hairstyles were always like a decade
No.
out of. But now it's like the women too. What the fuck was up with her hair?
I saw a piece of artwork once where a man...
That's what this hairdo was. It was a piece of artwork. Like Paisley brought it home from school. It was made of moss.
Somebody took every Playboy Playmate centerfold from like the 1970s and merged them together into one image. So you can't really see anything. It's just a big beigeish blur. And the same thing for the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and three of them are the same. But in the 80s, there's this big yellow halo around where the head area would be because they all had big, giant, teased-up, hair-sprayed hair.
So you're telling me the hairstyles have changed?
But that decade in particular, Craig, there were hairstyles in that decade that were never seen before or since.
Thank God.
But yeah, there's a reason for that. Mean Gene hosts the Royal Rumble Report.
Boy, did he ever. What a professional this guy.
Boy, have I said they need to bring this kind of segment back again. The
Best thing on the show.
The full gear control center or full gear report. We need one of these. So one of the other matches in the undercard of the Royal Rumble is Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty for the Intercontinental title. Sherry will be at ringside, but whose corner will she be in? And
I don't remember this step.
Well,
I do.
Because when Marty had returned, like he swung the mirror at Shawn, but Shawn ducked and the mirror broke over Sherry, and this is her time coming back. So Shawn says Marty doesn't deserve this title shot, but he's a cool champion. He'll give him the shot anyway. And as for Sherry, like any woman, she's going to be in my corner. And Marty declares the Royal Rumble will be Marty Jannetty Day. He's going to win the title. He's going to end Shawn's career, and Shawn doesn't know Sherry as well as he thinks he does. And then Gene lifts off like 20 names from the Rumble. Ric Flair, Tatanka, IRS, Bob Backlund, Jerry Lawler, Mr. Perfect, who does every Mr. Perfect promo you ever heard, Ted DiBiase, Crush, Rick Martel, Yokozuna, who also gets Fuji gets a promo, Randy Savage, Papa Shango, The Earthquake, Berserker, The Undertaker, Puerto Rican legend Carlos Colon, from Japan, The Great Tenru, El Matador, Typhoon, Samu, Fatu, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who also gets a promo, and then, of course, the main event, Bret versus Razor for the world title.
You know, people get all hung up on nostalgia and everything like that, and as noted earlier in this show, NXT 2.0 is a wrestling show, is significantly better than the first Raw. However, this fucking plug for the Royal Rumble is better than any of this shit they do nowadays.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's just, Lance was talking about this, about the two-night WrestleMania, and I think the two-night WrestleMania sucks because I don't want to deal with this shit 2 nights in a row. But he pointed out when you have a two-night WrestleMania, all of a sudden it's not so special anymore because now it's 2 nights. And nowadays, of course, you know, you have to have the men's Royal Rumble and the women's Royal Rumble. But they don't even do this thing here where they list off all these names. It's like, you know, you find out some people, there's going to be a list or whatever. People declare. But, I mean, fans know only
You will never see
3 guys are possibly winning this match.
You will never see a segment where random Raw announcer A just lists off each name that we have announced so far. You don't need to name all 30. You can still do surprises. Do the 20 names you know so far. Put up the guy's picture. Say it. And give it time. It's not a sprint. The idea is to let fans know these men will be in this match.
The other thing, too, is what was so cool about it. And, you know, a couple of years ago, I would have said this was cool, but you just can't do it in this day and age. And that is that they list this card for the Royal Rumble. And it's like, fuck, look at all these big fucking matches I'm going to see at the Royal Rumble. Because you're watching Raw, and it's Yokozuna versus Coco Beware, and Shawn Michaels versus Max Moon, and The Undertaker versus whatever that guy's name was, Damian Demento. So you see this lineup, and you're like, fuck, look at this lineup. And a couple of years ago, I would have said you can't do that nowadays because there's just so many matches you have to put on free television. But you know what? AEW manages to do this for their pay-per-views. They do these matches, and you're like, that's a fucking big... Look at that fucking lineup for that show. And meanwhile, they got 3 hours of live wrestling that they do every week, and they can still, because of the way they book and protect their matches, they can make these pay-per-views feel special. Whereas Raw and SmackDown... I mean, they list a lineup for a pay-per-view. It's like, I've seen 80% of these matches 3 times already. Mm-hmm. How can I possibly get excited for this fucking pay-per-view? It can be done.
Back in the street, it was empty. Now everyone is lining up to get tickets for Raw next week. So you can now walk up and buy tickets for next week. I guess he's still going to try and get in this show. Heenan's latest gimmick is to dress up as a Hasidic Jew. And still not let in. And it's Bobby Heenan. He has a fake wig. He has a fake beard. And Shawn, when he notices, sir, there's something strange about your beard here. He's just wiggling left and right. And he pulls it down, and then the light bulb goes off. Bobby Heenan! That's bad comedy, but I did laugh a little bit.
Yeah, the comedy was much better than anything Rob Bartlett did.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So Vince, if you go to Vince, Macho, and Bartlett, there's just the 3 of them. And they're sitting there, left to right. And you can tell Vince wrote it down in Sharpie. Here's the word you are going to say. You're going to say uncut. You're going to say uncooked. I'll say uncensored. And they're still not getting it right. Baffling.
You know there's such thing as pen and paper?
Cue cards.
You could write each person's deal and put it on the desk in front of them so when it's time they just look and then that's what they got to say. Way too difficult for this.
They'd probably step on each other's line.
We get a clip from some other show of Reverend Slick saving Kamala. And since he's a reverend, I can't say he saved him. From Kimchi and Harvey Whippleman. I just want to take note here. I assume this was Steve Lombardi under the Kimchi mask. Whoever this was, when Kamala chopped him, the bump he took over the top rope was so awesome. It was great. Main event of the first ever episode of Raw, Damian Demento versus The Undertaker. Taker squashes him and wins with the tombstone. My only comment / question is, when Undertaker started and he started using the tombstone, he would do the deal where there's like a body slam first and then transfer his arms around the dude's waist. But in the process, he would trap the guy's left arm every single time, which seems like the unsafe way to do it. And I'm wondering if
But he never hurt anybody.
He never hurt anyone. But eventually, at some point, he did just grab the guy around the waist instead, which is much easier to do and safer for the other person. They can grab him as well. And I want to know, he's done 9,000 shoot interviews in the past 2-3 years. Has anyone asked him about the change in the tombstone, when it happened, who pointed out to him, hey, there's a better way to do this? If he just watched a Japanese match some days, that makes more sense.
Well, Vinny, next time he does a cameo for $1,000, I think that might be a good investment for you.
I don't think it's worth that much to me. I'm just curious.
Okay.
They advertise... Yes, Craig.
I was going to say...
There's more to add to this match.
Well, okay.
Shitty, and it was over.
Here's what... When you said it was Damien Demento in the main event, my brain, for some reason, went, you mean the guy that writes the comedy songs?
That's Dr. Demento.
Right.
That's not Damien Demento.
I don't think
No,
we see
it's
Dr.
not.
Demento.
This guy was not a doctor.
I don't think he was either. But anyway, I was oddly pleasantly surprised when it wasn't the Dr. Demento.
Are you questioning his Dr. Demento's medical?
You thought Dr.
training?
Demento was going to do a match in the main event of the
Yeah,
first
what
night
the
of Raw?
fuck are you talking about?
I confused Dr. Demento and Damien Demento because of you, Brian.
Because of me?
Because you said it Demento, and I automatically went to...
It's my fault I said what his fucking name was?
I wasn't saying it's your fault.
Yeah, you did. You said it was because of me.
Oh, God.
Dr. Demento's still alive.
Sure.
Is he wrestling?
No, he has never wrestled because he's not a wrestler.
Right.
He's a radio DJ, best known
Yeah,
for...
well, it was not a commentator, but did commentary Rob Bartlett. So anything's possible.
You got a point
You're
there.
right.
Yeah, he's best known for giving Weird Al his first break.
Right.
Yeah.
Not wrestling either.
No wrestling involved. Although, in the subject of people who shouldn't be wrestling being advertised for matches, they advertised for Raw next week a cage match between Woody Allen and Mia Farrow.
Oh,
They're in the newspapers,
back when
you see.
Vince knew what was going on in the world.
It was at least a contemporary reference. That's fair.
I wouldn't be surprised if on Raw this Monday he announced a main event of Woody Allen and Mia Farrow for next week.
He still might. So Vince McMahon is interviewing Doink. Gets his name right. Tells Doink, listen, you don't like to make children laugh. You like to make children cry. And Crush has warned you to stop doing that.
You know what's funny about this, by the way? Before they go to this segment, they had the Undertaker Dr. Demento match here. And when it ends, Vince essentially signed off. He's like, well, we'll see you next week for Monday Night Raw. And the screen goes black, and I thought, there's like 2 fucking minutes left. Is 2 minutes of blank on the cock here? And then they come back for this interview. So I'm wondering if, like, Vince ended the show and then realized, fuck, we got a commercial break and we got 2 more minutes here. Get Crush! And they threw this shit together. Because there was nothing to this segment.
No.
It was a stupid question, a non-answer, and a nothing confrontation.
Doink's response when asked about Crush's warning to stop making children cry, Doink explained, listen, if they don't have a sense of humor, that's their problem. I laugh. That's all that matters. And if Crush was here, I'd tell him that too. Doink was awesome. I love Doink the original version of Doink the Clown. The evil clown Doink was so great.
And you know who wasn't awesome was Crush with his fake Hawaiian accent.
Which is funny because he's a real Hawaiian.
He's Hawaiian. Yeah.
Okay, but he was putting the accent
Well,
on.
yeah, he turns it up to 10.
Yeah.
Isn't that your job?
Listen here, brada.
Yes, he was not a particularly good vocalist, no. He warns Doink to knock it off. Doink responds by pulling out a squirt gun and blasting him.
Yeah, and then
They have the
then
worst
Crush has to chase him,
ever.
and Crush almost slips and kills himself. So he has to stop running, and then he has to do short bursts of sprinting as the clown gets away, and then that's how the fucking show
Well, it's
ends.
like he's chasing him around the corner, and Crush trips in the stairs, and it looks like Doink stops to make sure he's okay, but then Crush gets up and like catches him, and then has to pretend he can't grab him, and Doink runs more.
Yes.
It's horrible.
And then the end is just like Crush gets in the ring,
Yes, Crush.
and
says-
then the clown's out of the ring, and so the chase is over.
yes,
It's like, was it tag? Is he safe? Was that base?
I don't know.
And then the clown does a pratfall and then laughs some more, and then I was like, "What the fuck was this?" It was like on one of those Dynamite angles where they do just some angle and they announce a match next week, so it feels important. But this angle, if they would have announced a match, I would not have cared.
No.
I do not need
Well,
to see these men wrestle.
it's at WrestleMania.
They do this at WrestleMania.
Doink versus Crush is a
oh
Mania
my
match.
god, this is the one in the Caesars.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one sucked.
Yeah.
Low build.
Yeah. So, and they didn't play Crush's awesome theme song. I will say that. Crush had a great theme song. And then the very end, seriously, like 6 seconds, they let Bobby Heenan into the building, but of course the show's over.
Could have ended soon enough.
Yeah, I thought it was
Can you
down,
imagine
everyone.
if this show would have been 3 hours?
Oh my God.
Holy Christ.
Like, I guess if you've never seen it and you're curious, I guess you can watch it.
No, there's no need to watch this one. The show does get better. Like, pretty soon we've got the Ric Flair Mr. Perfect Loser Leaves Town match. I think that's in a few weeks, actually.
Based on the graphic, that may be next week.
I don't think it's next week. I feel like they do an angle first, but maybe it's next week.
Yeah.
But that match is great. So
he's in the Rumble.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, he's in the Rumble. So there is good stuff that's coming up here on this Raw. So we won't give up. We'll do Raw number 2 next week. Do you have a date, Vinny?
Well,
for Raw number 2.
Assuming they went every week on every Monday, it would.
And I think you should bring back the finishes report.
Oh yeah.
All right. Finishes on this show were clean pin, clean pin, clean pin, and clean pin. Do you really want me to do this for 5 years?
Yeah. I got the music. It's only 3 years, by the way.
Whatever.
Because the guy who's called Terrific is the heel, but the guy who's called Perfect is the babyface.
Right.
Some fucking fan held up a sign. I swear to God, it says, Mr. Perfect is perfect. That's what their sign said. I was like, God, fuck me. They like printed it out. It wasn't by hand. It was like they fucking got the fancy fucking letters and put it all on the sign. Mr. Perfect is perfect. That's what the sign said.
It's all in the name.
Do they have one saying Bret Hart is Bret?
God.
So
It's all heart.
very early in this match, Perfect does one very basic amateur waistlock takedown. He throws Terrific Terry Taylor to the mat, and it's Vince McMahon being Vince on commentary. He just bellows, "Nice takedown, nicely executed." And I had a light bulb go off, an epiphany. I need to see Vince McMahon doing commentary for like a Jonathan Gresham match.
Oh, God.
Or a Zack Sabre Jr. match.
Get out of here.
That'd be awesome.
Dude, he should have called Raw Underground.
So Savage is cutting. He returns. He was absent when the match began, selling the attack from Repo Man. He returns to the commentary desk, cuts a great promo on Repo Man. I'll give you credit. You hit pretty hard, but I've been hit harder than that, and I'm going to get my hands on you. And then he gets interrupted.
I'll give you credit, he says, but not that much credit.
Yes.
God, can you imagine we were watching those Superstars with the Repo Man and how fucking horrible Repo Man was, and he's just squashing jobbers, and now we're watching Raw, and he's feuding with the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
The Repo Man.
The Repo Man. I don't think it's a long-term feud, as we'll get to by the end of the show. But
I hope not.
So some people in the crowd are chanting, they want Flair. There were anti-Flair chants. There's a point, whichever Hebner this was, Earl or Dave, he had a very fast count. For all baby faces, all heels, every match he did, and even Vince in the end was like, this referee's counting very fast. But Perfect does like a headlock takeover and makes a cover, and Earl or Dave drops down and goes, 1, 2, and Taylor shoots his shoulder up and shouts, what are you doing? I laughed at that. So Bobby Heenan calls in. He gets a promo on Bartlett, because Bartlett tore up a photo of him and do whatever. So they go to commercial, and they come back. Now, this is relevant to the wrestling of 2021 and the television matches that this company is producing in 2021. They're doing this match, and it's a very, very fun match, and they go to commercial, and this really happened yet. They come back, and right after the commercial break, and the keyword there is after the commercial break, Taylor gets the heat. And all he does is pull Mr. Perfect by the trunks through the ropes to the floor, but it's not the deal where you get the heat, and you go to commercial, Raw rolls on, and they come back, and the comeback starts, and you miss the entire heat segment. No. You get to see, you feel like you watched the entire match, even though there was a commercial break in the middle.
Dude, not only that, but the finish of this match.
Oh, wonderful.
Ric Flair,
Artwork.
Ric Flair comes down to the ring, and tell me if this sounds familiar. He attempts to distract Mr. Perfect. Everybody listening to this has filled in the blank, but you're wrong.
Yes.
He attempts to distract Mr. Perfect, but Mr. Perfect is a babyface and not a loser. And so he does not get rolled up and pinned by terrific Terry Taylor. He grabs a fucking guy. He hits a perfect plex. He pins him in the middle of the ring.
You're not giving this
Well,
enough
hold on. You could talk about the details, but this is just the fact of the matter. He won the goddamn match via pinfall,
Yeah.
and then he ran after Ric Flair.
That's true. But yes, what happened, because yes, the distraction failed. So plan B for Flair was to get physically involved. He waited till the ref's back was turned. He lit into Mr. Perfect. He's wailing on him with chops and forearms and elbows, just destroying him. And he goes to throw him back in. His work is done. He returns to the locker room, and of course Vince notes, hit him and run away. That's just like Ric Flair. And Taylor grabs Perfect for the suplex. It looks like he's going to hit the move. And he even shouts, now! Like Perfect says to me, he says, now you're going to see a perfect plex. And he grabs him the suplex. He's got him the head hooked, and he throws Perfect's arm over his head, and he's standing tall. And he goes down, and then he goes up as Perfect suplexing him because he outsmarted Taylor as well. He pins him with his move. He gets the job done. That ref counts 1, 2, 3, and Perfect lets go, and he charges to the back to beat Ric Flair's ass. Amazing.
Dude, I watched the first 15 minutes of this. Up to this point in the show, I was watching this thinking, this fucking guy's lost his mind. Like, this is totally logical, good pro wrestling booking to build up a match, and now it's just a bunch of nonsensical horse shit. What the fuck happened?
The other logical thing that happened is when Ric Flair snuck out to distract Mr. Perfect, his music didn't play.
No, he was, in fact, he didn't tell the production truck, by the way,
How can you make an entrance without your music
I'm going
playing?
to ambush this guy. I don't want to know him coming out. Yes, this is fantastic to watch. Vince McMahon interviews Bret Hart, who is defending the World Wrestling Federation Championship this Sunday. The belt, as Bret called it. This Sunday is defending against Razor Ramon at the Royal Rumble show. So it's a Bret promo. It's not great. It's not horrible. He is not happy, of course, that Razor beat up Owen or has threatened to beat up Stu. Talking about all the things he's going to do to Razor on Sunday, including, I'm going to kick you down unconscious street.
Yeah.
Made me laugh.
That's a bad time. Dude, this promo was totally fine.
It was fine.
He had 2 minutes. They wanted to promote the match on Sunday, get in and get out. We got a 1-hour show. I thought he did a great job. And I was like, how could anyone fucking watch this and not think that the Winged Eagle was the best belt of all time?
Too, yeah.
Every time I hear people argue about, well, the NWA domed, the big gold belt. It's like, you didn't watch any wrestling. Come on. How can you watch Bret Hart with that belt and not think it's the greatest belt of all time?
Is Unconscious Street, is that in the French Quarter?
That's unconscious in the street.
Oh, okay.
Not quite the same thing.
No, he said unconscious street, Vinny.
I realize that, Brian. I'm
Yes.
finding Craig's joke.
I think Craig's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the weirdest thing any of us saw today, I'm pretty damn sure.
This was... So they have these signs in the crowd. Headlock for hunger.
Yeah, they're promoting a show to raise money for Somalian famine relief.
Yes.
A wonderful idea. That's
Somalian
tremendous.
Yes.
family relief. Like, I remembered this from the time, but I did not remember what came next.
So of all people,
You've actually ruined the joke already, Vinny. Because...
well, you were when you said it was...
Well,
That's true.
What we should have done was we should have said, they go to an interview with Paul Bearer and The Undertaker.
I guess.
Because then the fans start thinking, what could Paul Bearer and the Dead Man have to say? Who's he facing at the Royal Rumble? Is he going to cut a promo about taking 29 other souls? No.
Well, Paul Bearer begins to talk about souls and this kind of thing. But then he says, unfortunately, in Somalia, too many people are dying. Now, before we move on.
I want to do The Undertaker's line.
Okay, you do it. That's fine. That's fine. Now, I realize he is an Undertaker. That's
Yeah.
his business, right? It's an important job that we need, and that is his job. But when Paul Bearer says too many people are dying, this implies there is a proper number of people to be dying. We've exceeded it.
Well, Paul was wrong. Because then the camera pans over to The Undertaker, and he's there in his weird-ass long trench coat jacket.
Yeah, so this is the original look Undertaker. Got the black and the gray,
Yeah,
the
he's-
makeup on the eyes.
He's got the big hat down, and you can't see his head because he's got the hat on his brow.
Yeah.
And he's slow, because he's Undertaker, he's really slow. He slowly looks up and he goes, "No man should starve to death." I went, what in the fuck did I just see? No one should starve to death.
I mean, they shouldn't.
He's not wrong.
Not wrong.
But it's like, here's the point, okay? I should not be laughing about anything involving starving people in Somalia and headlock for hunger. But they put this fucking thing on television. It was ridiculous.
I laughed so hard.
It was absolutely ridiculous. If I'm going to hell, that's fine. I didn't book the fucking segment. I didn't put that on television.
Oh, God.
It's like
It
the
was
Undertaker-
bizarre.
It's not like the Undertaker doesn't want more business, but come on now.
You know the thing that's so weird about it is they do all this charity and Susan B. Komen and everything they do nowadays. And they have video packages for that as well. But it's like you go from the show and then you go to a video package where they're all themselves. It's Colby instead of Seth Rollins and whatever. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes babyface and heels that are feuding. They're doing their stuff and they're talking about it or whatever. This was not that. This was Paul Bearer and The Undertaker in character.
Right.
Talking about dying of hunger and how it's bad. Bizarre.
That's why Granny's book report just cracked me up, WWE, not talking about their charitable work. Come on.
Yes.
That's all they do is boast about themselves.
Marty Jannetty versus Glenn Ruth.
Oh, man, you just can't escape these guys.
So it's the Marty Jannetty of the Headbangers versus the Marty Jannetty of the Rockers.
Oh, horrible.
Well, he is.
Thrasher.
There's a Marty Jannetty of the Headbangers? I guess there is.
There is. It's Glenn Ruth.
Wow. I'm sure he's a nice guy.
Sure he is, too.
Not a great worker.
No, this is fine. They didn't do much. 1,000 arm ringers and arm bars. So Marty is challenging Shawn Michaels, the Shawn Michaels of the Rockers, for the Intercontinental title on the Royal Rumble on Sunday.
It wasn't the fucking Marty Jannetty of the Rockers during that match, I might add. Actually, I think it was a TV match.
The TV match, I think, is a great one, yeah. It's been 30 years now almost, but anyway. So, Shawn calls in on the phone to cut a promo, hyping up the title match. He says he knows what's going on in Marty's head because they teamed for so long, and he knows Marty's a simpleton. And when they were the Rockers, they used to shake, rattle, and roll all over the country. Well, at the Royal Rumble, he's going to shake his world. He's going to rattle his bones. He's going to roll them right out of the Royal Rumble. And so if he hangs up, he's done.
It is amazing. Like, this was a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And nowadays, live via satellite in 4K, Shawn Michaels from his home in San Antonio. Back then, we're going to call Shawn on his landline. He's like a fucking telephone voice cutting a promo for that. I was like, God help me.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So Marty does 5,000 arm ringers, and then the 5,001st arm ringer, he turns into a rocker dropper and wins.
Yeah, hey.
Which actually I liked the more I thought about it. Because
that's it's competent.
It's you're doing arm ringers.
Logical.
So focus on the arm, and thus when you strike with the arm ringer into a rocker dropper, he's not prepared for it.
Well, also, Vinny, you can't just go for a rocker dropper. You've got to soften up that man's arm.
I guess so, even though it attacks the head.
Well, you still got to wrap the arm to set it up.
The way he did it, I guess that's true.
Yeah. You gotta just put your foot over his head. This is not a fame asser. It's a rocker dropper.
It's very similar to a fame ass.
I know, but a fame asser, you don't have to loosen up the guy's arm first.
Well, no, you just jump and land on his head.
Well, yeah, but Marty ain't no jumper.
Marty does not have the leaping ability of Billy Gunn, if we're being honest.
Exactly. See? It's all logical, Vinny, if you think about it.
I like Glenn Ruth, how he had this tropical themed tights and then the spider web tattooed on his arm from his Thrasher gimmick.
Well, that's in the future.
He wasn't a Thrasher for like 4 more years, dude.
Understood.
Yeah.
He saw his own future.
Yeah.
His spidey sense.
Yes. Word. We get a clip from Superstars. So last week on Raw, there was a confrontation between Doink and Crush. It continued on Superstars. Doink wants to apologize to Crush. He's offering a flower as a sign of friendship.
It's idiot Crush.
And he wants to shake his hand, but it has to be his right hand because his left arm is mysteriously in a sling. And if you saw this thing...
This is fucking ridiculous. And the worst part
I guarantee anyone listening to me right now can go in your garage in 10 minutes and make a better fake arm than Doink had here.
The worst part is Vince fucking spoils it. He doesn't just go, let's take a look what happened on Superstars this weekend. He pretty much tells us exactly. He hit him with his fake arm. He tells us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then so we're going and all we can look at is his fake fucking stupid arm, which of course makes Crush look like a bigger fucking idiot.
Yes.
Because so obvious what it is.
Yes.
And then he whips out the fake arm and he whacks Crush with it. And fucking Vince McMahon on commentary starts screaming that he tore his arm off.
He took his own arm right out of the socket.
He's calling it like it's a fucking shoe.
He's doing it in the Vince voice, too. He took his own arm right out of the socket. And it's either Lawler or Savage from the other guys in commentary, but they say, no, it's a cast.
Yeah.
So hard. God, this show was fun.
They couldn't even build the hand like it was like a fist.
No, it was like this.
It was like
catcher's mitt.
It's like...
They could even put in like a cardboard tube so it at least seemed like it was solid. Instead, it's like it's filled with fucking socks. So he's hitting this guy with this giant fucking arm filled with socks, and every now and then they'd edit in some thumping noise. It was so ridiculous. And then they find one person in the audience who's like, oh, he hit him with a sock.
That could have been from any point in that show, by the way. That shocked fan. They just edited it into this clip. Yeah. And then Vince has to be solemn about this and say, we believe Crush has suffered a concussion. He probably won't be in the Royal Rumble.
Jay says he didn't call it a maneuver. No, there's actually another thing on the show where Vince screamed, what a maneuver. And it wasn't even a maneuver.
It was a pin.
Right.
Was it?
No, it was like there was somebody jumped somebody after the match and he screamed, what a maneuver. Maybe he was talking about the pin. But it was like a totally random what a maneuver in the middle of nowhere.
Right. The one I'm thinking of in the main event, Flair does a very basic cradle.
Yeah, it might have been it.
I think that's where he screams, what a maneuver. For the first time in the entire show, we cut outside of Sean Mooney, who's on the streets of New York in the middle of the night in January, freezing to death. He finds the Repo Man. His first question, of course, is why did you steal the Macho Man's hat? Why did you attack Macho Man and steal his hat? Repo Man says, I've been watching Macho Man on commentary for a long time. He's never paid attention to me, but I'm sure he's paying attention now. So Savage is able to, they're able to patch Savage from the announce desk, like into Sean Mooney's headphone, and Savage and Repo are going back and forth to do this promo battle. And Savage is talking about how all these things he's going to do. I'll get you in that street in New York, brother. I'll take care of you. And Repo's whole comeback is, I got your hat. Now you know where Jake Paul got it. Yeah. Jake Paul stole his gimmick from the Repo Man. I got your hat. Here on Raw in 1991.
I think he just got his hat.
Come on, Brian. Surely he's watching this show from before he was born.
It's impossible. Well, I mean, there is Peacock.
There's Peacock. The Royal Rumble report with Gene Okerlund, always fun. Razor Ramon does a very short promo. He's got gold chains in his neck. He's got gold rings on his fingers. And after he's done with Bret, he's going to have gold around his waist. We get just some of the prominent names you'll see in the Royal Rumble. The Undertaker, The Berserker, IRS, Yokozuna, Mr. Perfect, Typhoon, The Repo Man.
I was going to say Ty Conti, but it was Typhoon.
I don't think she was born yet either.
No.
The Nature Boy Ric Flair, last year's winner, Gina sure to point out. Papa Shango and Ted DiBiase. And also the Intercontinental Championship match, Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty, with Sherry Martel there in somebody's corner, but we don't know who. We go back to the street where Randy Savage is now searching for the Repo Man. He's crossing back and forth as actual cars are going by here in the streets of New York.
This lunatic is
It's Macho Man.
The streets of New York, running back and forth in traffic in his long fringed coat. This was the epitome and
Hatless.
Definition of lunatic fringe.
There is a point. Oh, God. Oh, Greg.
Thank you.
There is a point somewhere in the show, Savage has no hat. And he's there at ringside. And he's fuming and furious about this. And Rob Bartlett is there being Rob Bartlett. And he says something about how you're missing your hat. And Savage says, yeah, what about it? And Bartlett says, oh, nothing. I'm just admiring your nice. And you can tell, like, there's a thought, a glimmer of a thought in his head. He may have mentioned something about Savage's bald spot. But he is not a moron, this Rob Bartlett. And so he said, hairdo. And so Randy Savage didn't kill him.
Savage is really sensitive about his hair, too.
Yes. And, as you noted, a lunatic.
Yes.
So I don't think... They said Ric Flair was going to be in action later. I don't think they announced this match until they came out to wrestle.
I don't think they did.
But the match is Ric Flair versus El Matador Tito Santana.
Yes.
And I thought, holy Christ, that sounds awesome. And I was right.
Well, I mean, it was pretty good, but it wasn't. I would
it was
call
not
it
like
awesome.
This is not Flair Steamboat or anything.
No, this was a 6 on the granny scale.
Sure,
but you know what?
I love 6s.
The key is it was a 6, but like the things that Rick did, it was like a 10. Like I'd have to really think about it, but sometimes I think if I can only watch one guy, like against anybody ever, who would it be? And it's, it might be Ric Flair because I just absolutely love the style that Ric Flair works, and Shawn Michaels as well. And Okada could have a good match with anybody, but I watched this match and Flair was just, everything he did was so great. And it wasn't even perfect either. Like they had a shoulder tackle spot where he bumped way too early and off to the side. I was like, did they just fuck up a spot? Ric Flair and Tito Santana? And the other thing too is we just watched that Kenny Omega match with Allen Angels. Mm-hmm. And it was a big controversy the first time, and it was a not as big a controversy the second time, but it was still somewhat controversial that he gave this guy so much. Has no one ever watched Ric Flair? This fucking guy, and it's the Matador. It's not even Tito Santana when he's part of Strike Force.
No.
It's El Matador. And Flair fucking bumped and sold and bumped and sold. And like, he's in a loser leaves town match on next week's Raw.
7 days.
Yeah. Now, you could argue, and I would not have done this, but you could argue that Mr. Perfect could have distracted Flair and Tito Santana beat Ric Flair, because Flair's fucking leaving. At least you could put over some guys on the way out. But no, they protected Ric Flair in this match, because in fact, Vince did love Ric Flair, and he had made an agreement with Flair that, You know, if you're never not happy, if you're never not being featured the way you want, just let me know, and you know you can go. And he went. That's what happened. But Vince loved the guy, and he gave him a lot here. He didn't beat him.
No.
And this led to what a maneuver.
It did. So you mentioned the Omega Allen Angels match. I'm going to make an even weirder AEW reference, but hear me out. A weirder AEW comparison, but hear me out here. We watched a match a week or two ago on Rampage with Dante Martin. And I mentioned, of all the cool stuff Dante Martin did, it was a springboard dropkick and a sunset flip that took my breath away the most. Very, very basic maneuvers that he made look awesome. The first 4 minutes of this match is literally nothing but tackles and headlocks. This is first day of wrestling school stuff.
And Vinny.
And it's great.
Lockups.
And lockups.
Oh my God, the lockups on this show.
It was just a thing of beauty to watch. So
Terry Taylor and Mr. Perfect's lockups in the opening bout. Oh my God. I could just watch these guys lock up all day. Forget the rest of the fucking match.
Yes. So again, they're having a fun match, but nothing really important happens until after the commercial break. And Flair's in the corner, and Tito goes for a monkey flip, and Flair grabs the ropes and blocks it. Tito takes the big bump, and boom, there's your heat. So Flair's working him over. They announce Randy Savage versus Repo Man will in fact be on Raw next week. So Tito hits the backdrop, makes his big comeback. He hits one flying forearm, which was his finish, and I thought they would do the spot where Flair gets his feet on the ropes, but no. He just didn't make a cover. Tito tries another one. Flair collapses. Tito goes flying over the ropes to the floor. And then when Flair goes out to work him over, Perfect runs in and attacks with a DQ. Now, you talked about this a little bit, but in 2021, if you were doing this exact same setup, as you noted, Flair would have distracted Perfect, and Taylor would have pinned Perfect with a roll-up, and they'd do the same thing in the main event. So Flair and Perfect were both losers going into the big match next week.
Yes.
Which makes the big match not seem like a big match.
Yes.
But here, Mr. Perfect won. He overcame the interference and he won anyway. So his part of the big match is in fact big. Now Flair's in a different situation. He's leaving. So he shouldn't be beating anybody. But you want next week's match to be a big match. So you can't beat him either. So you have Tito run wild. Things don't go his way at the end, but he's not finished. It's not like Perfect ran in as Flair had him in the figure four or something. He's just out on the floor, and that's the point where Perfect gets to him. And they fight for the DQ. So the finishes on this show were wonderful. Made me want to cry. They were so great. And this brawl with Perfect and Flair, just laying it in. Just smashing each other. This was a fight. And I thought, actually, that was the end of the show, because I knew the Lose Leaves Town match was coming. I didn't realize it was that soon. So I thought it was the end of the show, but there's 5 minutes of promos left. So Vince is trying to get a word with Flair, but this brawl is still going on. They finally separate the two of them. And Flair comes out, and he's with Vince, and he's cutting a Ric Flair promo. He says, this company is not big enough for the two of them. Right here, next week, in front of God and the whole world. And when he says God, Vince's eyes get big. He almost does the gulp. Vince really was a tremendous interviewer, by the way. We're talking about him on commentary sometimes. It was like a mixed bag, but at least he's enthusiastic.
Dude, one of these days when we write the book about what Vince was best at, it's going to be everything except booking at the end. I think he was even a better wrestler than he was a booker nowadays. He was a horrible wrestler.
Probably. Yes. So Flair's just screaming, I want Perfect. One of us stays. One of us goes out of the World Wrestling Federation. In the middle of his promo, he stops. He walks behind him 20 feet. He kisses a fan. And before any of you say anything, this fan was very happy about this. He walks back to Vince and finishes his promo. Perfect is not man enough. He doesn't have the guts. He will never see the day in his life. He beats Ric Flair. And Flair leaves. He goes back to the dressing room. And Vince is killing some time. Somehow Perfect makes his way to the interview spot without bumping into Flair. I'm not sure how that worked out. But he accepts Flair's challenge for next week. Loser leaves town. He's fine with that. And Vince asks why he would risk his career. And Perfect just says, I'm going to do it. So there you go. We had an hour.
Yeah, the funny thing was, when they make the challenges and accept the challenges, Vince is upset. And he's frowning. He's trying to talk Perfect out of it. Like, why would you do this? Like, you're both great competitors. Because at the end of the day, if this were real,
he would not want
he
to
doesn't
lose
want one of
these
his biggest stars leaving the territory to go to World Championship Wrestling. So he's all, he's all befuddled and he's upset about it. And then, Perfect says he's going to do it and everything like that. So they go to commercial, whatever, they come back. And now Vince is cheerfully promoting the Loser Leaves Town match next week. So apparently during that 4 minutes or whatever, he thought, I'm going to make a lot of money off this one.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't. It's a Raw show.
So let's think about last week's show. I love Yokozuna and I love The Undertaker, but let's take Yoko and Taker and Damien Demento to some big, slow guys, have a bunch of big, slow matches. We'll have a Shawn Michaels match, but it's a nothing Shawn Michaels match, and that show sucked, as we noted. So he thought about it. He went back to the drawing board and said, what if I took all my really good wrestlers, like Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect and Tito Santana, and even Terry Taylor in the ring is very good, and I just had some good matches and some promos, and it led to something that's going to pay off next week. And there you go. They had 2 good matches. Marty Jannetty also wrestled. They set up 2 matches for next week. It's Repo Man versus Randy Savage and Ric Flair versus
Marty
Mr.
was
Perfect.
good, but
it was fine.
Wasn't much of a match.
No. And then there was a payoff to the Rob Bartlett stuff because we cut outside, and yes, he was right to be concerned about his car because now the Repo Man is repossessing it. And they have the tow truck taking the car away. Bartlett's upset, and the show goes off the air with Macho Man screaming, "You'll pay, Repo! I'm gonna get you!" What a great show.
You know what this show felt like, actually? Felt like a rampage.
It did.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
They set up storylines, they booked angles, and they announced matches for the following week.
Yeah.
This was not a WWE show nowadays. This was a Rampage show. This is the way pro wrestling should be done.
And they plugged a pay-per-view at the same time. Yeah, this is the giant thumbs up for Raw 2.
Yeah, this was a super fun show. I enjoyed it. Well, it was only, number one, it's only 45 minutes, and it was fun. So what more can you ask for?
So that's it, everybody. We're going to wrap it up for today on the finishes report, Vinny. We have been asked to provide a finishes report.
Well, it's news to me, but there's only 3 matches, so it shouldn't take too long.
He did tell you last week, but
did he?
I did,
Yeah.
If only I'd been paying attention.
Well, yeah.
Well,
that's part of
maybe
the
next
problem.
time.
Let me hit the song.
The finishes on this show were clean pin, DQ due to interference.
Hey, see? Look at how easy that was.
I mean, yeah, really, do we want to do this?
yeah.
All right.
Every now and then there's going to be something silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the same as when every match is stupid.
Well, that's true.
When the finishes report was played like 3 times before I got through all the explanations, that was funny.
Well, at some point, Vinny...
This Raw will turn into that Raw?
Well, we don't know. Let's just do it anyway.
Is some Raw going to turn into a Nitro?
It's called tradition, Vinny.
I don't know. We just grabbed it coming off the subway. That's where they got Rob Bartlett.
You know why this happened, Vinny? Because there was so much nothing happening in this match.
Oh, you
they
Brian?
had to talk about something.
This brings me to the second half of the match after the commercial break. So Bartlett's making jokes about Jodie Foster, and Heenan just screams, "What is he talking about?" Bobby Heenan's had his full of Rob Bartlett after one segment, because usually this is Savage's job, but he's wrestling tonight. So Repo's got some hold on him, a sleep or a half grab. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Savage gets the ropes. He reaches out with his hand. He grabs the rope with all 5 fingers wrapped tightly around the rope. Nothing happens. And he's just there. And time passes. Because you see, this match is so boring, the referee in the ring fell asleep. Eventually, he gets over and breaks the hold. The announcers are bored out of their minds. They're talking about the presidential inauguration. They're doing Rush Limbaugh imitations. And then Savage just hits the elbow and wins. This was awful.
Well, listen. If I have to be a not nice guy and blame somebody, it's all this fucking Repo Man's fault. Sure. Because as we learned watching World Championship Wrestling, this was every Randy Savage, and in the 80s as well, when we watched the Saturday Night's Main Event, this was every Randy Savage match. Sell, hit a big move and hit the elbow and win. That was every match.
Yes.
And he did the same match here, but the Repo Man made it incessantly boring. There was one spot that I laughed at where the Repo Man, Savage starts making one of his little comebacks during the incessant heat, and he goes to hit the ropes, and the Repo Man goes to hip toss him, and Savage just runs him over with a clothesline. Because I think in Savage's head, he was like, bro, this match has gone fucking long enough. Let's take this fucker home. So he starts making a comeback, and the fucking Repo Man like pokes him in the eye or something and cuts him off, and they go right back to the heat. I thought, oh my God, is this ever going to fucking end? And eventually it did. Big elbow. 1, 2, 3. Thank God it's over. That was a match.
I didn't write anything about this match. It was
nothing happened.
The funny thing,
Shinlocks.
The funny thing is that the only thing I really wrote is how Vince noted that the Repo Man looked ridiculous in the hat. And have you seen the Repo Man?
He's a strange-looking fella.
I feel like I just heard this.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's all I wrote about.
I mean, there's nothing else to say about this match, Brian.
I see.
It went 20 minutes.
You know what I noticed about this
boring.
match? What I noticed about this
Repo
match
wore a hat.
As Vince said, that guy looks silly in that hat. And I thought, have you seen him? He looks like the Hamburglar. That's what I got out of this match.
So this thing finally fucking ends.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, oh, great. Thank goodness. Anything else? Regret. I was filled with regret. Because out comes Kamala versus the Brooklyn Brawler.
Bro, this was better than the opener. You know what I like about this Kamala?
No!
Oh, Vinny, please. You're killing everybody here.
It was not better than the opener.
Oh, are you kidding me? It was short.
Was it?
Yeah, it was shorter than the opener.
I guess. It was shorter than the
opener. I think it was like 10 minutes shorter than the opener, actually.
Jesus.
You know what?
2 minutes.
I'm on a being a positive kick here today. You know what I like about this Kamala?
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy I would like to have had a bad match with. Because, you know, some of you don't even know this anymore because his business has just changed so much. But in the old days, you would give your fellow workers a light handshake. Where, you know, you just barely touch the fingers. That was the handshake. And then, like, Kevin Nash came along. He was like, you men need to squeeze that hand. What the fuck is this light shit? And then everyone's, like, shaking hands hard again. But in the old days, they did the light handshake because you were part of a fraternity of light workers. You know, this isn't real. We're gonna work light. Man, you watch fucking Kamala, he moves light. Everything he did was light. Like, you could see by the way he walked and by the way he did anything that it would be the easiest match on the face of the planet Earth to have a match with Kamala. Would it be any good? No. But, you know, from my perspective, I'd rather have a really easy match where no one gets killed than, like, a good match where you get hurt. So I like this Kamala guy. But was it a good match? No, it really wasn't.
No, it was not.
It was poor.
So even though he's a babyface now, he's been saved by the Reverend Slick and the people, and we'll get to that.
His soul has been saved?
Apparently.
This savage?
By the Reverend.
Yeah.
It's a fucking dumb storyline.
So he's still doing the bit where he's a savage, and so he doesn't understand how to pin guys. So, I've seen it 1,000 times. He does the match, hits the splash, tries to pin them with their belly on the mat, and after a long mental struggle, goes to roll them over.
That was worse than 87 chin locks in the opener.
Yes.
At least the crowd.
Here's
Here's
why.
why. I'll tell you why, Vinny. Because in the opener, during the chin locks, the people in the crowd are asleep and the fucking announcers are asleep. At least in this match, the crowd's all going like this, like, turn him over, Kamala! Like they were into it.
Because they wanted the match to end.
Well, I mean, they wanted the other match to end too.
So he does this spot where he's trying to pin the guy belly down, and it's not even the finish. And they keep going. He tries it again. He still can't figure it out. He keeps going. He does the splash, and now the guy actually is on his back, and he rolls him over to his belly. Fuck off! Fuck this! Fuck you! God!
Wow, Vinny. It was just a wrestling match.
Kamala finally turned him over and won.
Just a wrestling match on a show.
I'm not sure it was a wrestling match.
It was. Come on. It was entertaining.
No!
They did a couple of
Factually
holds.
untrue. It was not entertaining.
It wasn't entertaining.
Okay.
But they did some moves.
So Slick,
think
thanks
we agree
to
on
people.
that.
There was a jumping chop.
There was
and
a splash, and there was a super kick.
He did a big,
A very light splash, by the way.
A super kick that missed.
a big barefoot.
Sure, yeah.
So Slick thanks the people for the conversion of the Ugandan giant. You opened your heart to him, he says, and he has
That's
opened
how
his
this
heart to
works?
you. That's what he said. He warns Harvey Whippleman and Kimchi, stay out of the way, or he won't be responsible for what Kamala does. That's actually a very good promo by Slick.
Sure it was. Low bar here on this show today.
The fans, I don't know what this chant was all about. The chant was, "You are a man."
Yeah, because when Slick saved Kamala from Harvey Whippleman and Kimchi,
Okay,
they were calling him an animal and a beast.
I see.
And Slick told Kamala, "You are a man.
How did
Stand up
this
for
fucking
yourself."
shit not win worst promotional tactic of 1993? I guess I'd have to go back and see what won. Let me see what won
There's
there.
probably a lot of terrible things in 1993.
Anyway, babyface Kamala is strange,
It really is. It really is.
and babyface Slick even stranger.
He was still good though. I like Slick.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
So it's the day after the Royal Rumble, the come home show, I guess, from the Royal
Cactus Jack amnesia angle.
Rumble. That was terrible.
Fuck, the conversion of Kamala is 1,000 times more of a disgusting promotional tactic than Cactus Jack having fucking amnesia.
So this post Royal Rumble report was basically Gene letting the people who didn't buy the show know the most important results. There were no photos, there were no videos, there were no promos. It's Gene Okerlund and his stellar tan just giving you the results.
It's as I remember back in the day, they did the pay-per-view on Sunday, and then the replay would always take place on a Tuesday.
There were replays back then. I don't recall them actually plugging directly the replay, but yes, they wanted you to buy the replay, which is why they didn't show you everything.
My God, what a simple time it was back then. Think about the worst promotional tactics of the last few years. And then we go back to the mid-90s and we got Cactus Jack amnesia angle. Eric Watts gets pushed. Fake retirement of Ric Flair. Gene Okerlund ads on the hotline. And fake Razor and Diesel.
Wow.
Oh, the simple times of the mid-90s.
So Gene explains the 500-pound Japanese superstar Yokozuna won the Royal Rumble, tentatively setting up a WrestleMania main event against Bret Hart,
Well, that happened.
provided Bret Hart retains his title between now and then. Bobby Heenan unveiled Narcissus, Lex Luger. He's sure to add, I'm not a big Lex Luger fan. I don't know when Gene and Lex would have bumped into each other before this point, but he says he does admit Lex looked like a big bronzed Adonis. And, of course, the 8-foot Giant Gonzalez debuted in the Royal Rumble.
Fucking 8 feet.
Heenan at one point claimed he was 20 foot 10.
May as well.
If you're going to say 8 feet, say 20. So that was it. That was the whole segment.
Gene was awesome in this segment.
Gene's always
He's
awesome.
such a fucking great,
Gene.
just an old school salesman. Like everyone raves about Don West because Don West was more of a, sort of like an in-your-face, obvious salesman. Gene Okerlund was a fucking awesome salesman under the guise of a unbiased. Well, he was a little bit biased against Lex Luger.
He was.
Just a wrestling
I
announcer.
am not a big Lex Luger fan, he said.
Yeah, but he had to admit
He is a
he
big
looked
bronzed Adonis.
fantastic.
Yes.
Didn't Don West work on the Home Shopping
Yeah,
Network or
he did.
QVC
That
or
is
something?
where they found him, yes. So we go to Ric Flair versus Mr. Perfect, and I actually thought to myself, my God, they're going to do this match, and then the Bushwhackers are going to follow them.
No.
That's not what happened. There were no bushwhackers in this show. False advertising. So this is like a famous match, and like heralded as one of the great matches of 1993. And you go back and watch it, and it's a long match. It goes through 2 commercial segments, but everything up to that second commercial break is adequate. It's a 2-star match.
The first 2 segments of this match, I think they called this entire match in the ring from looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And we were talking about how the announcers were bored in the opener. But in this particular match right here, they're about 3 minutes in, and Vince is starting to get pissed off.
Yes.
And he's talking about how somebody needs to do something here.
It's better being too defensive.
It's Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, and they're going to go however many minutes they went, so they start slow. And they stand and they look at each other for a long time. And they do a lock-up, and then they go back to the corner, and they do a slap spot, and then they separate, and they look at each other. And Vince is like, he wants his fucking shit to get exciting here. He's paying this fucking guy one more time, so let's get this shit on the road. So from there, it's like, it is, I don't want to say it was, you know what I would say? Every now and then I go, you get 2 guys, and it's impossible for them to have a bad match. Like, if they go in and try to have a bad match, it's still going to be, like, a fine match because they're both so fucking good. They can't possibly have a bad match. That's Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair.
Yep.
But the first 2 commercials, the first 2 segments that they did, if they had 100 matches, literally 99 of them would be better than this match. I can't imagine these 2 having a worse match. But it was still a good match because it's Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect. They fucking were botching spots. Mm-hmm. There was some spot coming off the ropes where they both didn't know what they were doing, and they just fell down. And so, like, I will give them this. The moment they fell down, they just went right to a chin lock, and they didn't panic. They didn't rush. They just laid there for a while. Right. And then they went to the next spot.
Flair was running off the ropes. Perfect went to leapfrog him, and Flair didn't duck.
Yes.
And so he just kind of collapsed and fell to the mat, and Perfect says, well, my arm's around his head. I'll grab him.
And it was also weird because there were at least 2 spots, and probably many more, but I noticed 2 of them, where Mr. Perfect was so clearly feeding Rick, and Rick didn't take the bait. Like, there was one spot where something happened in the corner, and Perfect turns around, and so his ass is towards Flair, and he just leans over and he puts his hands on his knees. He's waiting for Flair to do the chop block. Flair doesn't do the chop block. He just walks around to the other side of Perfect and then does some other spot. Then there's another spot where Perfect, he sells his leg, and he starts grabbing the rope and limping over by the ropes. And you know exactly what he wants. Flair kicks his leg, and he does the flip bump and lands on his head. Flair don't do it. So this whole match was just like, you could not have had a worse match between these 2 guys. But then after the second commercial break, it actually turned into a great match.
Yeah. But the last thing I want to mention about this middle segment here is there's a point where Mr. Perfect is doing the mounted punches in the corner, and for all the terrible things they do with the camera these days, I haven't seen this one before. They're filming this, and it's just like the guy, I think the guy was in the apron, he may have been on the floor, but just looking up at Mr. Perfect as Mr. Perfect rains down punches on Flair's head. And then the camera slowly rotates 90 degrees. And so now it looks like Flair is on his back and Perfect is punching him. And it stays there. I don't know why they did that. So we go to a second commercial break, and I'm like baffled about how this match is merely there. And then the third segment, it's like 3 or 4 minutes of great wrestling. And Perfect is no-selling, and they're just chopping the piss out of each other, and Flair's trying pins with his feet in the ropes, but he takes the big giant backdrop of death, or he goes for a backdrop, and Perfect grabs him by the head and hits the perfect plex out of nowhere to win. And like I say, this last 3 minutes were awesome.
It was amazing because the fans were up and down for the match, but man, as soon as Flair sent him off those ropes and put his head down for the backdrop, as soon as Perfect hooked him, this fucking place got on their feet because they knew it was coming. And he hits that perfect plex. And back in those days, you ain't kicking out of a finisher on Monday Night Raw.
No.
And he hit that perfect plex. 1, 2, 3. Flair got pinned. And you know what's the most amazing thing about this entire show? And I'm talking, I couldn't even believe my fucking ears from this company. They go to break and they come back, and Vince McMahon says, Ric Flair will be finishing up his weekend commitments and then it's all downhill
It's
for
all
him.
downhill for
Which,
Ric
of course,
Flair.
talking about him going to WCW. But I was amazed that they were like, we've advertised this guy, and so we are going to give you what we advertised. Whereas nowadays, they could not possibly give a fuck less about whether they advertise something and deliver. It's like, we're just going to advertise shit. I couldn't even tell you how many times we're going to advertise a match for Raw. We have one thing advertised for Raw, and they don't do it. It's not like they advertise the Bushwhackers and 3 other matches, and then they don't do the Bushwhackers. They literally fucking will advertise one thing for Raw and not deliver. They have no... They don't give 2 fucks. They got your money. They don't care. Back then, if you bought your tickets to see Ric Flair this weekend, even though he has to leave the company, he's going to be there to give you your money's worth. I was stunned. What the fuck's happened to this place?
And the weirdest thing in this match is how Perfect ended up getting color. Rick whipped him into the turnbuckle, and Perfect hit the turnbuckle and then
Slid down the pole.
He threw himself back, and then basically his head was heading straight for the apron, and he tucked, and the announcer said he hit his head on the pole. I didn't see that, but he come up and he was bloody.
He went down that pole like a fireman, except upside down.
Upside down.
Yeah.
That
Bad
was
way to
so
go down
weird.
the pole, by the way.
Understood.
It was strange, but when you miss Mr. Perfect, you do whatever you want. There was a different spot in the match. It wasn't important, so you may not have even registered it, but I've seen a lot of guys get whipped into the corner, and they go like chest first, like Bret Hart, and bump to their back, or so you hit it with your back really hard, your feet go flying up, you bounce out and land on your back. Flair goes into the corner, back first, and then takes a front flip bump. Or is that Perfect?
Perfect did that, yeah.
Yes.
I've seen him do that a million times.
Well, he did it
I
again.
don't know
here.
why he does it. It's weird.
My favorite thing is when he gets his head thrown into the turnbuckle, and he'll jump up and with his feet will land on the bottom rope and then do a half gainer.
Yes.
And then do a flip in the air.
Yes. So that's it. There's no big post-match promo or angle or anything. Just the match ends and Flair's gone and Vince says it's all downhill. Stick around, folks. You'll want to see the match we announced for next week.
Boy.
So we go to
wait.
commercial. We come back and we come back for about 20 seconds and Bartlett's doing some jokes and Heenan's telling him to shut up or whatever. And then up comes a graphic, which I may never forget. Mm-hmm. Because, first of all, and I do stress, first of all, there's more. But first of all, the match is Typhoon versus Doink the Clown. Wow. Okay. Now, the key to this is, and it's a verbal, or it's visual, not verbal, but I'll explain. It doesn't just say Typhoon versus Doink the Clown, nor does it say Typhoon versus Doink with the clown in quotes. It's Typhoon versus Doink, open parentheses, the clown, close parentheses. I guess it's not so much his nickname as you may be confused as to which Doink we're referring to here. It's not Doink the janitor, nor is it Doink the politician. It's Doink the clown. I laughed at this. Punctuation humor tickles my funny bone.
My God, what a dork. I just thought it was... I laughed at the fact that we're going to see fucking Doink and Typhoon. That was much funnier than any punctuation, Vinny.
This can't be the main event.
Why not?
That's what they advertise. That's the one thing they
That's what
advertise
I'm
for next
saying.
week. Oh, you guys enjoyed Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair in a loser leaves town match? Well, wait till next week.
Yeah.
Doink the Clown will face Typhoon. That sounds like shit. I hope it picks up soon. Because it was a real down.
That first
real downer
episode,
today.
the first episode was very, very bad. The second episode was much better. And I thought we were good to go. And this third episode, man, I don't know.
I really wanted to like that Flair match, but it was just there.
The last 3 minutes is all you need to watch.
I feel like we gave up after Raw 3 the last time we tried this. So we got to keep going.
Got to do at least one more.
We got to get to Raw 4.
I've got to know if Typhoon can beat Doink the Clown.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Doink is going to beat him. Doink's getting a push.
That's true. He has a Mania match.
Typhoon is... I don't know what this guy's doing
suspect Typhoon's
right now.
done, yeah.